Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan, I am Just One Reader, and I am here with another recent reads wrap-up. Today I will be talking about books numbers 9, 10, and 11 that I have read so far this year, 2018, and those would be The Beatrice Letters by Lemony Snicket, Civil War Land in Bad Decline by George Saunders, and Full Dark, No Stars by Stephen King. So without any further ado, let's start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. Book number 9 that I read this year was The Beatrice Letters. This is kind of a supplementary material when you are done reading A Series of Unfortunate Events, which is a series that I just spent a year reading, and I wanted to read this to see what type of information I could get, and it was actually a very fun experience. I kind of really dug it. It is not exactly a great source for information. It doesn't give you a lot of answers to the mysteries that were left unsolved by the end of A Series of Unfortunate Events, which I thought was the objective of this book. It didn't really do that, but what it did do was it sort of continued on with the story of A Series of Unfortunate Events. It's kind of both a prequel and a sequel to A Series of Unfortunate Events. Basically, we follow two sets of correspondence in this book. First, we follow Lemony Snicket as a child writing to Beatrice, but the Beatrice who will later on be the Baudelaire orphan's mother. So that's one sort of storyline. And the other storyline, or the other correspondence that we follow, is Beatrice Baudelaire, who, spoilers if you haven't read A Series of Unfortunate Events, book 13, Beatrice Baudelaire is the daughter of Kit Snicket, and who is sort of taken by the Baudelaire orphans at the end of book 13, and we follow her correspondence with Lemony Snicket trying to find the Baudelaire orphans who have gone missing or something's happened to them. So this is a kind of very confusing, strange story. It doesn't really provide any answers, but I thought it was a lot of fun, and I really liked how played I felt by the author. I really felt like Daniel Handler, the author, really played me, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars, very fun read, it was very interesting. Then the next book that I read was Civil War Land in Bad Decline by George Saunders. This is a collection of short stories and a novella. The novella is quite long. It is like 100 pages long, and then we have like 6 or 7 short stories, which in very George Saunders fashion are very short. So George Saunders. Okay, George Saunders is an author that I absolutely idolize and revere. Ever since I read his collection, his most recent collection, 10th of December, which became my favorite book of 2016, I think, I have wanted to read more by this author. I think 10th of December is a much stronger collection than this one, but you know, the thing with George Saunders is even his average stories, the stories that are not as great, even his average stories are better than most, or better than what's out there in the world, which is the same thing that happens to me with Woody Allen. I mean, Woody Allen has some movies that are not like amazing Woody Allen stuff, but even his average movies are, to me, more enjoyable and much more worth watching than your average movie. So the same thing happens with George Saunders. Now, this particular collection is Civil War Land in Bad Decline. It has a very strong, recurrent theme running throughout the collection, and that is this theme that he explores a lot of masculinity and what being a man and what being, you know, the man of the family, the head of the family means. It has a lot to do with morality, it has a lot to do with work, with providing for your loved ones, providing for your family, It has a lot to do with guilt as well. It has a lot to do with this this really dark side of humanity. It is incredibly humorous. It's very, very funny and witty. And if you know George Saunders' writing style at all, you know that he has the perfect tone. That's my favorite thing in George Saunders, in all his work. He has the perfect balanced tone between absolute tragedy, dreadful, human darkness, and its counterpart of very warm, funny, witty, and hopeful. Most of the stories in this collection focus on very similar themes, but also very similar situations and settings. For example, a lot of the stories, if not all of the stories in here, take place on different kind of dystopian worlds or dystopian versions of America, and they take place in theme parks, really bizarre, strange, weird theme parks. I love this kind of thing. I love his ideas. I think his ideas are absolute gold. However, I do recommend that if you are going to read George Saunders, whether it be this collection or any of his other collections of stories, I really strongly recommend that you read the stories with some time in between. You have to read the stories, to spread the stories out in time. Don't read the stories very close to one another, because then you sort of take the risk of the story is becoming very similar and very repetitive. That's a risk because they are kind of similar in theme and setting and situations. But if you read one story a week, I think you will really appreciate this. So I love this. I didn't love this as much as 10th of December, but I mean, it's George Saunders. He is a genius. I gave this 4 stars. And finally, book 11 that I read was Full Dark, No Stars. This is another collection of novellas. This includes 4 novellas by Stephen King, and reading this really reaffirmed something that I've been thinking over the years, and I'm always really afraid of saying it out loud in front of a camera, but I really think it's true. I really think Stephen King, to me at least, is much better suited for a novella or a short story format rather than a novel. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like his novels. I mean, I have mostly read novels by him, but he just has a different way of approaching a shorter story or novella in this case. So this includes 4 novellas. The first one, just very quickly, an overview. The first one is called 1922, which I think has been adapted into a Netflix movie or something. And I really like that story. It was kind of historical fiction, very, very fucked up and really dark and psychological and full of anguish and desperation. I loved it. Then the second story I really loved as well. It's called Big Driver. It's about this woman who gets raped, and we follow her sort of revenge journey. The third story was called Fair Extension, and that's probably the most magical, supernatural one in this collection, because it's about this man who has cancer, and he is, very depressed, and he sort of, he finds this kind of magical man who sells extensions. And so for this protagonist, he decides to sell him an extension of his life. So basically he extends his life, he gets rid of the cancer, and things start just going great in his life, but the downside is he has to sort of inflict his bad luck into someone else in order for him to have better luck. So it's a really, really funny, dark story. I really enjoyed it because we see this kind of moral this kind of moral question of, would you do this? If you were in this situation, would you do this? Would you inflict all your bad luck onto someone else to have a better life yourself and to provide for your family and give your family the life that they deserve? So I really like that. And then the last story in the collection is called A Good Marriage. And this was the weakest one for me. I didn't really like it that much. I still thought it was okay, but it was not as great as the first three. So overall, really enjoyed this collection. It's a collection that really focuses on the darkness of humanity. It's very different to most of Stephen King's work in that it doesn't have any supernatural or magical or monstrous horrors. This collection is much more about the horrors within the human psyche and what humans can do to one another. So I actually really recommend that if you want to try some Stephen King or some Stephen King collection, this is one of the best ones that I've read. And that's it for today's recent reads. Thank you very much for watching. I'm looking forward to reading your comments down below. I'm Just One Reader.